I'm sorry, but your current salary could pay for 3 junior engineers. We have to consider the budget. That statement didn't strike me directly. It cut. Cold, slow, and sharp like a blade honed over many years. I just nodded. No arguments, no rebuttal, no requests for more time. The room was silent, as if it too felt awkward. Even Kyle, who once called me the second brother, lowered his head, eyes glued to the table. I looked around and saw avoiding eyes. Faces that once depended on me to handle crises now turned away as if I were a stranger. What had I done wrong? The silent answer lay in the ruthless tone of Calvin, the new CEO. To him, I wasn't a person. I was a number, an expense to eliminate. I had been with Centercore for exactly 10.5 years. From day one, when the production floor had only 8 people and no proper engineering department, I was there. I built every process, adjusted every schematic, trained everyone. I even stayed overnight at the factory for 3 consecutive nights to save a major contract from collapse. I never asked for a raise, never requested a promotion. I thought just doing well was enough. I had been too naive. I packed my things into the old cardboard box I used last year to transfer documents to storage, a thermos engraved with 40th birthday from engineering department, a metal ruler I'd used since my first year, an old photo of my wife, Angela, smiling under Vermont's red maples. No one saw me off, not a word of luck, only suffocating silence and the frantic keyboard clatter trying to drown out the guilt in the room. As I stepped out, I saw Darren, the engineer I'd trained since he was an intern, about to stand. But Calvin's cold glance made him sit back down, like he'd been struck with a load. I don't blame Darren. I too had bowed my head like that when I was young, but my heart felt heavy, not because of betrayal, but because fear was controlling an entire generation. My old pickup truck sat quietly in the corner of the lot. I placed the box on the passenger's seat, sat in the driver's seat, but didn't start the engine. My hands gripped the steering wheel, eyes staring aimlessly toward the factory I once called my second home. I felt empty. No more technical reports, no more 7:30 a.m. meetings, no more hundreds of emails awaiting approval, just me, 46 years old, an engineering degree hanging on my home wall, and an undeniable reality. I had just been pushed out by the very place I spent a decade nurturing. I didn't cry, didn't smash anything, didn't write long emails. I quietly turned the key, left the lot, and left behind a part of my life I once thought would never betray me. That night, when Angela opened the door and saw me come in earlier than usual, she was surprised. "What's wrong?" I put the box on the dining table. "They let me go." "Why?" "I earn too much." She said nothing, just stood there, looking at me, eyes mixing anger and disappointment, but no tears, no shouting, just the exhaustion accumulated from the times I missed our anniversary for urgent meetings. I understood that. "What will you do now?" she asked. "Don't know yet," I said, sitting down. "I'll rest a bit first." Angela nodded and went into the room. She closed the door softly as if not to disturb me, but in that silence, I felt a storm gradually forming inside me. A storm not to destroy, but to remind me that everything was far from over. After that night, the house grew unusually quiet. Carol didn't utter a word of blame, nor did she try to comfort. Her eyes, then, were like a silent pause. Not anger, but fatigue, deeply soaked into her soul. I saw a hint of helplessness there, as if she didn't know what to do with me at this moment. The next day, I sat again at my old desk in the living room, a small corner where I once passionately studied and solved countless tough problems over the years. Opening the leftover cardboard box, I pulled out a thick engineering notebook, where every sketch, diagram, and bold idea I once persuaded my superiors to adopt was kept. Flipping through the pages, memories rushed back. There were projects, seemingly impossible, that I helped bring to life. Like the last time we saved a major contract with Sterling Systems when 2 junior engineers refused responsibility. I personally went to talk with the client, proposed a solution, and restored their trust in the company. I realized that for many years, I was not just operating machines, but the one who kept the whole system running smoothly. Yet now, all I invested was treated as unnecessary cost. They chose to replace me with younger engineers, paid less, inexperienced. Could they maintain the achievements I built? The feeling of emptiness mixed with helplessness lingered for days. I couldn't deny I had been cruelly pushed aside like an outdated object, but my heart refused to accept that truth easily. I knew the knowledge and experience I carried were more than ink and paper. They were a solid foundation that young people couldn't easily replace. One weekend afternoon, as I was poring over my notes, the phone rang. The screen displayed Brian's name, a former colleague who had stood by me through many projects. "Easton, I heard you just left Cinecore, right?" Brian's voice was tinged with confusion. "We're all shocked. Most of us didn't expect this to happen so fast." I was silent for a moment, then replied, "Yeah, it all seemed planned." Brian told me about the current struggles at the company, from new projects constantly running into problems to customers' dissatisfaction because no one experienced enough was handling complex technical issues. They tried handing everything over to the young team, but things only got worse. "You know, Easton, someone even asked me if you could help." I looked out the window and saw golden leaves falling gently and quietly, like my fate at that moment, yet a thought sparked in my mind. Maybe it was time for me to step out of the shadows, not to seek revenge, but to prove my real worth. I decided to take time to think about the future, not rushing. But inside, the flame still burned softly. I didn't just want to start over. I wanted to do it differently, my own way. That night, Carol entered the room and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "You know," she said, "I'm not surprised they treated you like that, but I don't want to see you stop." Those words were like a gentle breeze, soothing some of the wounds inside me. I held her hand tightly, silently promising not to let this injustice defeat me. Before going to bed, I returned to my engineering notebook, finding a page where I once noted an idea to develop an automated production line. It was never completed, but always a project I wanted to realize if given the chance. Now that chance seemed to open before me, not under Cinecore's roof, but from the very things I had built and carried with me. That thought wouldn't let me sleep. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least I could begin. And I would begin by holding on to myself, with experience and faith in myself, not relying on anyone else. The first day after leaving Cinecore, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Calvin, the person I once called boss, now sending a desperate plea. They were having trouble with a new project, a series of technical errors delaying progress and causing clients to threaten contract withdrawal. "Easton, we need your help, not officially, just some advice. Things are really bad." I stared at the screen, feeling empty. I could accept, take the money, then go back to save what I had built for 10 years. But I didn't want to. This wasn't the time for shouting or revenge. I understood better than anyone that a building only collapses when the last bricks are removed, not because someone lit the fire. I decided to keep my distance. Carol noticed the change in me. She didn't ask much, just occasionally held my hand when I sat quietly by the window. Her silence no longer held disappointment, but gradually turned into something else. A quiet support, a silent belief in me. One night I sat at the old wooden desk in my home office, opened my worn laptop, and began writing. Not a revenge plan, just a list. A list of secrets Cinecore never knew I had. Long-standing client relationships. Complex technical processes never officially documented. Innovative solutions I had used to overcome difficulties without anyone knowing. I wrote down each item, detailed and precise, from unfinished drawings, patents pending approval, to personal connections I built during meetings with clients. Things the company couldn't replicate or buy with money. When Carol came in, she saw me deep in thought over the long page of notes. She said nothing, placed a hot cup of coffee on the table, and softly said, "You're preparing a new path for yourself, aren't you?" As we're preparing a new... I nodded, feeling the strength hidden in that focus. It wasn't anger. It was calmness and determination. Day by day, I spent time completing that list, not as a weapon, but to recall how I had contributed to the big picture of the company, and to hold on to the value I still possessed. Every line was a piece of the past they had tried to throw away like trash, but to me, it was proof of skill and perseverance. Carol was always there, silent but steady. Sometimes she suggested things I hadn't thought of, like contacting old engineer friends or seeking opportunities outside. Though no longer an official employee, I still held an important key that Cinecore couldn't replace. But I wouldn't rush anything. I let everything flow naturally, with control. That calmness made me different. They were worried, anxious. I waited. I didn't want to destroy, just stood by watching as the flaws slowly revealed themselves. When inexperienced projects and young engineers faced difficulties, I didn't need to intervene. They showed their weaknesses themselves. I only needed to wait for the right moment. I clearly felt the change within, from someone who once endured to someone who knew how to conserve strength and choose the right path. That's the difference between fighting blindly and winning wisely. Carol looked at me, her eyes no longer sadness or disappointment, but faith and expectation. She knew I wasn't alone on this journey, and the days ahead wouldn't be about anger or hatred, but freedom and rebirth. Because sometimes, you don't have to light a fire to destroy a building. You just stand aside and patiently wait for it to collapse under the weight of its own mistakes. One evening, I met Bill at a small cafe where we used to have lunch together during our working days. He looked more tired than before, but his eyes still held the usual determination. We sat across from each other, cups of steaming coffee warming the cozy space. Bill began sharing about the difficulties Cinecore was facing. The new projects kept missing deadlines, clients started demanding compensation, and the young engineering team was confused. No one knew how to handle the complex issues. "I think you should consider some opportunities out there," Bill said. "Paragon Tech is looking for people with real experience, not just relying on degrees or reputation." I nodded, feeling warmth from an old colleague's concern. "Paragon Tech, huh? I've heard of them, but never thought I'd get the chance to work with them." Bill smiled, placing a business card on the table. "They value practicality and problem-solving skills, not the kind of company that cares only about a pretty resume. If you want, I can introduce you." The thought sparked within me, a chance to prove myself in my own way, no longer bound by outdated rules or rigid policies. I didn't rush. I declined Cinecore's invitation despite their struggles. It wasn't out of spite, but because I understood the real issue. Not that I didn't need them, but that they didn't need me, the way I once thought. A few days later, I contacted Paragon Tech using the number Bill gave me. The conversation was quick but friendly. I made it clear I wanted only short-term cooperation, under transparent terms, and with the right to refuse any project if it didn't fit my skills or values. They agreed. It was an initial consulting contract, no long-term commitment, perfect for regaining my working rhythm while maintaining the freedom I needed. Entering the new environment, I noticed a huge difference from before. Here, creative ideas were encouraged, not stifled by bureaucratic procedures. Colleagues were young but truly energetic and eager to learn, not just waiting for orders. My first project was to reassess the production system for a major client. The issues seemed simple but were actually far more complex, especially since those before had ignored small warnings due to inexperience. He used all the knowledge and experience accumulated over many years to propose optimal solutions that saved costs and boosted efficiency. Paragon Tech's team gradually trusted and valued my opinions. Seeing respect from new colleagues and understanding from superiors gave me extra motivation. No longer constrained, I could work the way I believed right, focusing on results instead of paperwork or titles. Meanwhile, Carol was always by my side, sharing thoughts and encouraging me to keep moving forward. Her quiet companionship was the strength that kept my spirit steady through the toughest times. The road ahead was still long, but the start with Paragon Tech ignited a new flame in me. Not a flame of revenge, but a flame of aspiration and freedom. Within just a few weeks working with Paragon Tech, my reputation began to spread rapidly. Former clients once closely tied to Cinecore started contacting me directly. They no longer called the old company, but reached out to me for advice and support. Arcadine was the first client to send an email. They were facing significant difficulties with a new production line. a system supposed to boost productivity, but continuously plagued by complex technical failures. I received an offer to consult under clear, transparent, and completely independent terms. I spent many days and nights surveying and analyzing every link in their operation chain. Minor errors that seemed insignificant had accumulated, creating bottlenecks affecting the entire system. I proposed a series of repairs and optimizations requiring no major investment but ensuring effectiveness. In less than 6 weeks, Arcadine saved nearly $400,000, a figure I initially couldn't believe when I received their report. The client was not only satisfied, but also deeply grateful for the dedication and expertise I provided. This success led Paragon Tech to quickly offer long-term cooperation. They wanted me to become an indispensable part of the team, accompanying them through many upcoming major projects. However, I set clear conditions from the start. I needed absolute freedom to choose projects, with the right to refuse any work that didn't align with my abilities and personal values. I refused to become part of the old system I once escaped, where employees were puppets controlled by pressure and profit. Paragon Tech accepted those conditions without hesitation. They understood that someone with experience and passion like me needed to work my way to maximize value. The following projects I joined left their own mark not only by results but also by the difference in working style: creative, autonomous, and closely connected with the team. I felt a revival within myself, not the person who was once pushed aside, but a leader in my own way, building a career on my own foundation. Carol, seeing those changes, couldn't hide her pride. She said, "You no longer work for anyone but yourself." Emails and calls from former clients grew in number as they found a solid support, someone who truly understood and could solve problems instead of empty promises. That was not only my success, but also proof of the value of experience and sincerity in work, things that money or youth cannot easily replace. The road ahead remained full of challenges, but now I walked with confidence and respect from those around me. Not because I was stronger, but because I chose to stand up at the right time and work the way I believed. After days consulting at Paragon Tech, I realized the need to build my own team to maximize effectiveness. The work wasn't just about solving isolated problems, but required tight coordination, a collective that understood and trusted each other. I started contacting former colleagues at CenterCore, those who had shared many tough years with me. Jenny, Leslie, and Mark were 3 of them. They were not only excellent engineers, but also people who had shared many tense work months alongside me. None of them returned because of promised salaries or prestigious positions. What brought them back was the belief in the value of the work and trust in how I built the work environment, a place where each individual was respected, empowered, and not bound by meaningless administrative processes. We met at an old warehouse in the city's northern industrial area, where I rented a workshop. No expensive desks, no air conditioning, no fancy meeting rooms, just worn blueprints, steel functional old technical equipment, and the enduring enthusiasm of a group determined to do things differently. The first assigned project was improving the packaging line for a consumer goods factory. On paper, it was a small task, but the actual system was a complex maze of outdated, incompatible parts and many bottlenecks, causing wasted time and materials. Jenny, the former technical lead under me, now returned with more professionalism and decisiveness, led the field survey. Leslie handled planning and document management, while Mark, a passionate young engineer, took charge of equipment inspection and testing. We worked tirelessly, sharing tasks and ideas openly. Everyone clearly understood their responsibilities and, more importantly, felt the meaning of the work they were doing. After a few weeks, we discovered critical weaknesses in the system: an unstable old controller, outdated control software, and unscientific operating procedures. The replacement solutions were designed to minimize downtime while increasing work efficiency. The results did not disappoint us. The line's productivity improved by 26%, significantly saving operating costs and reducing material waste. The client was thrilled, seeing this not only as a technical improvement, but also as a transformation in their production organization and management. Looking at my team, I felt prouder than ever. They were not just ordinary employees, but true partners who trusted and were ready to face challenges with me. Despite the heavy work pressure, we did not fall under unrealistic demands or endless meetings. Everyone worked toward a common goal, not for titles or paycheck numbers. Carol frequently visited the workshop, bringing simple meals and gentle encouragement. She understood that I was not just building a new business, but rebuilding my life from the first bricks. The trust from former colleagues made me realize that true value did not lie in my previous workplace, but in the ability to create and maintain a work environment based on respect and professionalism. These initial successes were just the beginning. The story we were writing was not just about technology or production, but about how people choose and hold on to their own values, despite seemingly insurmountable challenges. I saw in the eyes of Jenny, Leslie, and Mark a fire that never went out, a fire of aspiration, resilience, and faith in the future we were building together. Soon after, my team began to make an industry mark. A legal letter from Global Edge arrived, surprising me. The old company accused me of poaching employees and unauthorized use of intellectual property. The serious accusations were written sharply, like a harsh warning directed at me. However, instead of panicking or avoiding, I stayed calm. Years in the profession taught me how to face challenges with clear-headedness and strategy. I sought Carter and Reed, a reputable law firm a friend recommended. My lawyer, Elizabeth, was sharp and well-versed in the engineering industry as well as complex intellectual property cases. Together, we analyzed every point in the letter, reviewed all contracts, patents, and confidentiality agreements I had signed while at Global Edge. Clearly, there was no evidence that I violated any contract or stole any assets. The former engineers returning to work with me did so entirely voluntarily, based on mutual trust and respect, not forced poaching. Elizabeth promptly drafted a strong rebuttal, not only rejecting all accusations, but also sending a warning letter back to Global Edge about their illegal tactics used to apply pressure. More importantly, she helped me build a smart communication strategy to protect our reputation, preventing baseless accusations from damaging the image of me and the team. Meanwhile, an attractive investment offer came from a large financial fund. They wanted to pour strong capital into my project to expand, scale, upgrade equipment, and quickly capture the market. The investment amount made many dream, along with commitments for comprehensive legal and business support. I carefully considered it. But deep down, I knew my greatest value wasn't money. It was trust, the spirit of creative freedom, and the honest working methods my team and I had built. Accepting investment could mean losing control, having to follow investors' paths, and gradually losing the team's soul. I called Carol and shared my thoughts and feelings openly. She wasn't surprised and gently said, "You need to hold on to yourself and the things you believe are right. Money may come and go, but faith can't be bought." The decision to reject that investment wasn't easy, but I had no regrets. The important thing was I still kept my freedom at work, still worked with passion and responsibility, without pressure or influence from any outside force. Work continued to progress, while legal attacks from Global Edge kept coming to apply pressure. But my team and I didn't waver. Every challenge was an opportunity to prove our resilience, careful preparation, and above all, everyone's solidarity. Peace is not the absence of storms, but knowing how to stand firm before the tempest. And I chose that way for myself and my companions. A year passed since I started rebuilding my career my own way. The small team that once was has grown to a group of 19 people, engineers, managers, and specialists I proudly call teammates. We don't just work together, we share a common vision and values. First warehouse was no longer large enough for development, so we opened a new facility in an industrial park, not far from the city center. This was not just a production site, but a home for creative ideas, where every member felt respected and inspired. Early last month, a representative from Arcadine, our most important client, called with a different proposal. They no longer wanted me to handle individual projects, but hoped to collaborate on building a comprehensive, long-term, strategic production plan for their entire system. This offer was not only recognition of previous work, but also a challenge for me to prove my leadership and creativity on a larger scale. I knew this was an opportunity to elevate our team and work to a new level. At a recent team meeting in the new warehouse, I took time to speak frankly with everyone. The atmosphere was somewhat formal, but also warm as we all gathered around the table, listening. I said, justice is not something given or found by luck. It is something we build with our own hands and determination. Every member of this team, every relentless effort, contributes to the fairness we deserve. Everyone's eyes lit up, sensing the power in those words. I no longer wanted to revisit the past with resentment or seek revenge. This chapter with Harding had long closed, through maturity and wisdom rather than impulsive actions. Our growth wasn't only measured by headcount or profits, but also by a strong work culture and team spirit. I saw people who worked not just for money, but for faith, for the values we created together. The journey continues, not to prove who's right or wrong, but to build something better for ourselves and the community around us. The hard days are behind. Now it's time to look ahead with steady eyes and a passionate heart. Easton transformed failures and challenges into strength to build a career in his own way, based on faith and real values. Instead of drowning in anger, he chose to face difficulties with calm and decisiveness, building a strong team and an honest work environment. Easton's story proves that justice is not something granted, but the result of perseverance and unceasing effort. It is also a lesson about the power of freedom and integrity in modern life. What do you think about Easton's journey and how he faced challenges? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss inspiring stories about life and family coming next.